Today, we dive into the world of competitive cooking, how to host your own competitions, and how to harness the power of guest bloggers. Take it away, Saffron.
Kids don't have the back knowledge set that we have, and sometimes I feel like I assume that every adult knows the same amount of stuff about food that I did, that they all did home ec at school and their parents taught them, but apparently that's not true. I'm slowly learning. So they'll come up with simple questions like, it says, Mom, it says cream the butter and sugar, what does that even mean? I'm like, okay, I'll add an extra line in
there. Hey there, I'm Jason Loxton, and this is Makin Bacon. We're all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. As bloggers, we often get caught up in making money directly from our blogs, using ads, affiliate links, and sponsored posts. But we forget there's a whole world of food out there to explore and make money from. Today's guest will show us a few of the unique ways she's created a living. She loves cooking in the outdoors, and because of this, she started Bush Cooking, a website that specializes in outdoor recipes. She started cooking outdoors at a young age with the Girl and Boy Scout associations in Australia, eventually traveling to Asia and then America, where she started competitive cooking, including competing twice at the World Dutch Oven Championships and multiple times at the Barbecue World Championships. With a haul of wins in everything from brisket to dessert, all cooked on traditional fire, she knows her stuff. And with a Bachelor of Business and vast experience in business development and improvement, she is always in a juggling act of passion versus profit as she forwards the Bush Cooking brand. This has resulted in a diverse range of income streams, including the normal writing, teaching, and presenting, but she has truly grown in the area of coordinating competitive outdoor cooking competitions, having recently needed to spin this off into a sister company of Food Sport Consulting. 2019, she coordinated competitions that placed competitors and brands in front of over 500,000 people. I can't wait to learn more from today's guest, Saffron Hodgson, the driving force behind Bush Cooking. Saffron, welcome to Makin Bacon.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today. It always sounds so much better when someone else says it. Just feels like a lot of hard work at the time.
Well, I can definitely relate to that. I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time with me today. And I think there's a lot of ways that you've moved your blog forward that my audience can really benefit from. But one thing I always like to start every interview with is, what is it like around your dinner table on a typical day?
So most of the time, I actually do cook outdoors at dinner. So I have actually 12 barbecues, so there's a little bit of a choice between what we're going to do. I just want to say the definition of my barbecue ranges from smoking all the way through to the gas, through to flat top grills. I know that across America in particular, there's quite a few different definitions of what barbecue is, so I admit all of those.
So do you let your kids help out on the grills, or do you just take over and not let them mess anything up and just do it all yourself?
No, I'm actually a really, really strong believer of kids cooking, and especially in the outdoors, which I still do a lot of work with the Scout and Girl Guide associations, because when they're at that age, they have no fear of cooking. So, if you get them in there and they're learning skills, it's great. When they get a little bit older, they're always worried about messing it up or making a mistake or getting burned. But when they're young, they don't have fear. And for me, as a parent or as a leader in this, outdoors is great, because I would rather clean up outdoors and try and clean a kitchen after kids have been through there. So it's a win-win for me. But my kids love cooking. Ash is definitely like a meat type of guy, and my youngest son is actually into cakes and sweets, which I'm not. But that may be an outcome of I don't let them buy sugary things. So if they want to eat them, they have to make them.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way to approach it. It's like, yeah, you can eat whatever you want, but you need to figure out how to do it yourself and make it from scratch. So enjoy.
Yeah, so that worked.
So with all the different grills I'm sure you have, I'm sure this is kind of like asking you what your favorite child is, but what grill do you like the most? Which one is your favorite?
At the moment, and it does change, I go through stages. I've got a small griller grill, which is actually a smoker, but can get hot enough to do pizzas and stuff as well. One of the reasons I like it is one of their round ones in their range, which is quite small. So when you have a small family, it feels like the right thing to fire it up. It's got good installation and it works. A couple of my other grills I love, but unless I'm cooking for like a scout troop or like have a lot of people over, you have this massive cook space and you're using this tiny little part of it. And the other one that's getting a lot of time at the moment is my Blackstone, which is a flat top grill. So in Australia, I was brought up with everything on flat top. So when I came here and I saw that everyone had grill grate marks and things, I'm just like, I can't cook half of my recipes on that. Like, it just falls through the holes. Like, what are you guys doing? So I've had to really learn how to use both of them. But now I'm back to my traditions. It's a lot easier for me to cook my favorites.
I really love how different parts of the world have these different pieces of equipment to kind of accomplish the same things. And then you run into those recipes, like you're saying, that you just can't translate the recipe because of the differences in equipment.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to get around it, but they were always a little bit awkward. I actually got some custom hot plates made for my first grills here. I mean, I think the dynamics has changed a lot in both countries. So I'm seeing a lot more flat top grills in America, and in Australia, we didn't smoke when I was little. It wasn't a thing. I remember smoking a tiny little bit of fish. But the last, I think about 6 years, it's really gone from nothing to like this massive cult following of smoking and barbecue in Australia. So that's been really interesting to watch.
And I want to talk some about bush cooking, your website, because when I first heard about it a few years ago, I just really loved the concept. It's such a unique idea, and there's not really anything else like it out there that I'm aware of. Can you talk a little bit about where this inspiration came from for sharing these true outdoor recipes?
Yeah, so because I cook a lot with scouts, and I was started doing the competition in America, and I'm a little bit different to some of the teams, because a lot of teams will be a competition barbecue team, or they do competition Dutch oven, but I got to the point where I call myself a competition outdoor team, because I think I was cooking in about 5 or 6 different sanctioning bodies, which most people don't do. So I'm out there cooking, and I'm getting a lot of questions from fellow competitors and the public, and I try and find good links to send them, like, oh yeah, you can just do it like this. And it was really hard to find the information. I mean, when I was little, it was all in books and passed on by my dad and that type of thing. So I was like, you know what, let's just try and get this into one spot and try and get it like in a nice format, because there was a couple of really good websites out there that had amazing content, but I couldn't last more than 3 minutes on them without getting a headache. Like their color schemes and the craziness and ads just all in your face. And I was just like, no, I want to go back to basics, which is what my brand's all about. Simple, natural colors, simple, to the point. They don't need my life story. They just want a recipe, and that's what they get.
I always like your example of finding a s'mores recipe, and the first result online is this microwave version from Hershey. And I'm not an expert like you are, but if you don't have a flaming marshmallow in your hand, I'm pretty sure you're not technically making s'mores.
Yeah, I've done a lot of talks on that. I mean, it sort of breaks my heart. I mean, outdoor cooking is this huge thing, but our cliche recipes are just hidden in amongst the plethora of other ones that are available on the web. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate. And as an outdoor industry, I mean, we've got a lot of different brands and cookers and people out there, but none of them have that, what would you call it, size to be able to take on the big brands and get those first place positions. And so that's one of the things I really wanted to do with bush cooking. I mean, it's not just about me. Like, I have a lot of recipes on there because I know what people are looking for, and I live, eat, and breathe it. But I also know that there are so many people in the world, like the ones that beat me in competitions all the time, that know more than me. I know that you know more about sous vide than I ever will, and I know that Chris Lee knows more about smoking than I ever will. So I've tried to bring different people onto my website, and between us, I'm trying to get us all the way up together, where we can get our names and our brands and this style of cooking actually turning up in results about outdoor cooking.
How did you go about finding other people to contribute to your blog? A lot of people think about using guest posters, but it's something that's really hard to actually pull off. You have 40 or 50 people contributing, so how did you go about successfully doing that?
Yeah, at the moment I got about 40 or 50. So a lot of them are friends, as much as you can be friends in competition and living so far apart. And generally, my industry is really good at selling their product. They're really good at competing. They make these recipes, but they've never really been good at sharing them. Like, they'll post them on social media, they'll type something up about them, and then they're there and then they're gone. how about you put it on mine, and then I'll just give you all the links back, and we'll push your product, and we'll try and work together a little bit. The other thing is with brand websites, and I don't know if this is the same with kitchen appliances. I don't look at kitchen stuff very often, but they've got these amazing websites about their barbecues and how to use them and how to do it, and they'll have a recipe section which isn't optimized at all. Almost no one's ever sort of going to find it. So it's not coming up in the search rankings because the way that it isn't optimized. So then the entry point is coming in like, oh, I own this barbecue. I want to use this barbecue. I'm going to go to them to find the recipe, and then the recipe gets used. Where if they put it on something like my website, all of a sudden anyone who's looking to make pulled pork, for example, will go to my website, then they'll use it, and then they'll say, oh, this is used by this brand's barbecue. I wonder what that's like compared to my barbecue. Or, and a lot of things are like brand awareness. Like if you see the same brands coming up and they keep showing up in your recipes all the time, the next time you go to buy a barbecue, you're like, well, what's the go with that brand? I've seen it a lot. It's at the top of their mind. And so you can create the growth like that. So in some ways, for me, having done marketing and understanding brand awareness and everything, it makes sense. But for some people, it's a little bit more of a hard sell. It's like, I've got my recipe on there. I haven't sold any grills right now. Like, what's going on? So a little bit of it is education too, because these guys know barbecues. Trying to explain SEO and what we all do as an industry in like food blogging and recipe, it can be a little bit of a stretch, and they've only got like 2 seconds to get their mind around it because they just want to get back to barbecuing. So, I've had some people that are just like, yes, Saf, whatever you say, if this is going to be good, I'll do it. And then I've had some other people which have been a real hard sell, and then there's some people I'm just like, yeah, I give up. Yep, you keep doing what you're doing. I got that. But that's selling altogether. I mean, I used to get really upset when people wouldn't buy in. And then I read this one article that was like 80% of people are going to say no. And there's nothing you can do about that. So once I sort of got that through my head, like that everybody doesn't have to like want to do or be part of my thing, it was much easier. But hearing no 80% of the time is still hard.
Yeah, that's so true. I think it was Jenny Melrose that said, if you're not hearing no the majority of the time, then you're not asking for big enough names. Because if most people aren't saying no, then you should start aiming higher because you could be getting a lot bigger names than you currently are.
Yeah, got to go bigger.
So they send you the recipes themselves? Do they put it in the website on their own? How does this process go from this expert having this idea and this recipe that they know to actually getting it to show up on your website?
Yeah, so I love these guys, but they can't write a recipe to save their life. So I actually, my biggest thing is getting them to send me a good set of photos. So I have some criteria on that. If you look through some of the older recipes from different contributors, you can see that my standards were a little bit low when I started. But now I'm really trying to get send me 6 photos, I'll edit them, I'll crop them, I'll do everything like that. Send me through your rough recipe, and then I have a style template or a style guide that I put over the top of that. So it doesn't matter which recipe you end up on the website, it's going to always be the same style. I make sure the ingredients are in the same order they're used. Obviously, I have like Australian and American mix, so I have rules on, the metric versus imperial and when they're used. And I think I'm one of the only people who actually know all the translations from, chickpeas to gazebo beans, and then they get more complicated from there. And so, yeah, I'd like to type them all in myself and make sure that the end user of the recipes gets a good product.
And so the people that are making these contributions, you said some of them are working for major brands. Is that their main compensation, for lack of a better term, that they get exposure and get put in front of a new audience? But there's no passing through a profit, so you're not paying for like per post, right?
When I first started like on a website, like I think maybe most people do, although I get the feeling a lot of people do it for passion and then it turns into a business. I sort of did it the other way. I really sat down and worked out what I wanted to get out of my website. I wrote a business case. I looked at the statistics and the data that was out there at the time. I think it said something. I remember seeing a study that said 5% of people who have food blogs actually make enough to live on. And then I saw what they considered live on as the magic number and realized I couldn't live on that. So
it's enough to literally not die.
Yeah, I mean, so I read through all that, and I read I went to a lot of the conferences before I even started my website, which is really funny when you're sitting in a conference like, oh, what's the name of your blog? Yeah, I'm going to one day do something like that. But, it was really good for me. It was a background. I had a full-time job, which allowed me to sort of think about this and then transition. So I sort of was ramping up one before I left the other, not like stop cold, like, okay, let's do this. But one of the big things I read was a magic 3-year number on the website. So my website literally just turned 3 years old, and that was the magic, like, okay, now I'm going to start trying to actually monetize it. And until that point of 3 years, although I had just the Google ads on there running through, I literally was just using it to see who was paying and how the cross-reference went over. So I would screenshot it every now and then and send it to someone and go, hey, I noticed that your electronic ads are turning up on my website. Perhaps we could, keep in touch and maybe in the future, work directly, because that would make more sense. So I sort of did that. So now I'm really, for the first time, trying to truly monetize, because it's hard to go to someone and go, hey, I got 3,000 views a month. How do you want to do it? But now I have a number that I'm proud to go behind, which in some ways is bigger than people think. Other ways, to me, it's smaller than what I want, but it's usable.
You start showing that you have this community and you really know who they are. It's beyond just demographics. It's not salary or gender. It's what are they focused on? You can go to them, and instead of saying, I have people that like to grill, you can say, I have people that love to smoke. They understand smoking recipes and they want to do more complicated things. And you have the smoker that does really cool, complicated smoking things. Let's work together and really provide value to both the brand and to your fans. And that's a lot better pitch than just kind of going in with, hey, I have 50,000 or 100,000 monthly visitors.
Yeah. And the other thing that my website's got is it seems to have a lot of entry-level people coming in. Because if you think about it, people who do this all the time, they don't need any recipes, or they know how to convert them from the kitchen to the outdoors. So I get a lot of I've just got my new smoker and I need ideas. I get okay, my family's going camping and I have to cook. What am I going to make? And that type of thing. So I think that's the true level, and that's the best thing for the brand, is it's bringing in people looking at just starting entry level. So they probably bought the cheapest gear, they get to know the brands, and then they'll step up. So that's the theory.
And that's something we found that it can be really helpful when we know that a large part of our audience is new people, because they might not even have a machine yet, or they might have one, but they're probably going to want to buy another one. And that's something that brands really love to hear. It's these people that you can get in as they're just getting started, then they're going to follow a brand over the long time. And that's something that we found brands really are interested in and trying to work with us on those types of people.
The other weird thing I did with my website is, because thinking about that entry level thing, and the fact that I have 2 unfortunate young kids that are scouts, is I get a lot of the kids and the scouts to read it. So they've given me so much feedback that only a child would ever give you, if that makes sense. Kids don't have the back knowledge set that we have, and sometimes I feel like I assume that every adult knows the same amount of stuff about food that I did, that they all did home ec at school and their parents taught them, but apparently that's not true. I'm slowly learning. So they'll come up with simple questions like, it says cream the butter and sugar. What does that even mean? I'm like, okay, I'll add an extra line in there.
You're talking about the base knowledge that some people don't have. I'm sure you run into this a lot with especially smoking, because I feel like it's a complicated process that people can really kind of dive into the weeds on and get kind of nerdy over, like a lot of the stuff that I write about. And at a party, I brought out the whipping siphon that I use to make foams and some cool stuff, and people were asking about it. And so I was explaining how the pressure works and the cavitation of the bubbles and all this stuff. And then I asked the one person to use it, and they said, oh, great. And they just pulled the trigger and blew it all over the wall. They didn't realize that they had to turn it upside down to put it into the container. And I thought, all of this stuff I'm going into, and what they really needed to know is here is how you literally hold it where the liquid comes out.
Yeah, and that's hard as a teacher too. We were talking about before, I teach a lot of classes and I use it to make a bit of money. And I want to talk about the things that are exciting to me and the new things that I've learned. But you sort of have to just take this massive step backwards and go, okay, they're at a steak class learning how to cook a steak. They probably don't really know very much. and they probably don't really care about all those crazy techniques that the guys use competing. I mean, if you want to make anything complicated in cooking, go hang out with a competition team, and they do about 50 steps more than are required to just try and get that one tiny extra point. Is amazing.
There's definitely a difference between trying to cook as flavorful as you can in a specific way and trying to get dinner on the table. Like you can make really good food pretty easily without trying to go, step after step after step.
Yeah, and my brand's always been pretty basic and keep it pretty normal. And sort of I did my competition thing. I think 2013 was my magic year. I think I did like 6 weekends in a row. I went to the World Barbecue, to another World Barbecue, to the World Food Championships, and back like 6,000 miles I drove, did that big loop. And then after that, I was like, okay, I've ticked all my boxes. I didn't win, but I've participated. I did get called to a couple of calls to the stage, which is just like, oh, that was a miracle. But since then, the reason I go to competitions is completely different. Like, and we'll get into like how it sort of went into my business, because everybody wants to think about like the Myron Nixons, Chris Lilly, Tuffy Stone, and they win a lot, and they're great. But not everybody can win. And to me, that's like the NFL side of football. But the heart of football is the kids playing at the park and hanging out, doing the barbecues afterwards. And competition cooking's the same for me. Like, I go to a competition because I want to catch up with these guys. And trust me, the food they're cooking at night before the turn-in the next day is always way better than anything being turned in. So, that's what I love, and just talking about their passions and what they've got at home and their new trick and everything. So once I sort of made the decision that that's why I was going, so instead of like putting, like literally sometimes these guys are putting $1,000 into one cook, I would just go to Costco, pick up the cheap brisket. Sometimes like, oh, there's no prime. Oh, well, whatever. I don't care. Like, I just go along. So when I would win, the guys knew me. I'm running around with kids. I've rock climbed walls between turn-ins. They know what I'm like. So when I win, it's not always a cheer. Sometimes it's literally a laugh or like gasps of seriously. For people who do competition barbecue and it's all over TV now, you usually put in the brisket flats and then you put in the burnt ends. And the rule is you have to have a slice if you put the slice in. Was at this one competition, it was a little bit odd because it was an alcohol wine tasting, and I had my 2 kids with me, so the entire thing was an alcohol zone, and my team was literally sat on the outside. So I'm like, well, that's gonna make my social agenda a bit hard. So I spent most of the time with my kids. We rode bikes around and we were playing football out the back, not really focused. So when I picked up the brisket to put it in the box, it literally fell apart, like in my hands. Like, it was just so soft. And my kids were rolling around on the floor laughing because they knew that wasn't a good thing. So all I had was the burnt ends. So this tiny little box is like 9 burnt ends. It looked like there was nothing in it, and I won.
Oh, jeez.
Everyone knew. And like, I talked to some of the judges, and they were like, well, we can only judge what was in the box, and they were pretty amazing burnt ends. But that's not how I think it should be, and it was just very funny. So yeah, I mean, food sport, I mean, everyone thinks of the competition and the winning, but there is this whole like piece underneath that iceberg that's to me the important part.
So for some of us like me that aren't good enough at cooking to go to world competitions, what goes into a competition? What happens at this event?
So pretty much all the competitions that I compete in have a sanctioning body that sits behind them. So for barbecue, most people know KCBS, which is based out of Kansas City. Where I compete, it's PNWBA, the Pacific Northwest Barbecue Association, which is actually the second oldest in the country. Texas has got a couple. So there's really clear rules on what is expected. The judges are trained, so when they come in, you sort of know what they're looking for. So when it comes to competition and people are like, what flavor profile do you cook? Do you cook Memphis? Do you cook Kansas? Do you do like Texas brisket? I literally have to say I cook competition flavor profile, because like you would never have that in a restaurant. You would never serve it anywhere because you're thinking about it completely differently. So when you go out to a restaurant, you have a whole plate of food that you want to eat, and there's different flavors and textures, and it's fun. When it's a competition, they literally have one sometimes 2 bites. So you're trying so hard to make that so intense and so perfect. When I was, like I said, when I was sort of really cared and I was doing well all those years ago, I couldn't eat more than 4 bites of my barbecue without feeling ill. Like, that's how intense it was. Like, and I'm a pretty healthy person, and in Australia we don't use as much salt and stuff. And I would literally guzzle Coke, like the 24 hours coming up to a competition to, I don't want to say deaden my taste buds, but just change my palate to be more like what they were looking for, if that makes sense. But you know, and it's the same, like I do chili competitions. Like if you eat true competition chili, it tends to be really salty. And yes, we use MSG, sorry guys, but it's just a reality because we need to get that depth of the meaty flavor in these things. But a lot of the times when they do them, they have the competition which goes over and gets judged by the judges. And then we have a people's choice. And I have a tendency of winning people's choice because I take my competition chili and instead of just immediately sampling it out, I put in a bunch more kidney beans, another 3 tins of tomato just to try and pull out all that craziness and make it something like a normal person is used to. So I know that sounds like I'm saying bad things about competition, but that's just how extreme it gets to be really good. And all the competition guys, there's hundreds of articles on the web, do not eat their own competition food. They just don't.
So. It sounds like you're trying to accomplish something very specific, not necessarily make the best chili that for someone to eat for dinner.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of us like doing what I could call non-sanctioned or extra categories, because there's not so many rules or expectations on those. So I do a couple of live throwdowns, like the chop style and things, and you know, that one is particularly just like get something on the plate. It's the only goal. So far I've been lucky, but it's been very close. But when you're doing like these non-sanctioned ones and they've got celebrity judges or people off the street, you can really start to cook more that home style stuff and the stuff that you can get a bit more passion behind.
How many people are generally at one of these events?
Okay, so it changes. The different sanctioning bodies have different business models because everything comes back to a business model. So the State Cook-Off Association, which is the fastest growing sanctioning body in the world, like they've come from nowhere to being massive, they basically target the entire thing about the competitors. So there's no public at all. So the ones people think about, like Memphis in May, the American Royal in Kansas City, Houston Livestock, that's all about bringing in the public, and they want to see the barbecue. Sometimes different places you can sample, health department's a nightmare, but you know, depending where you are. So those ones are a lot more public facing. And then that varies. Like I've been at events where my heart breaks for the event organizer because like there's hardly any public there, and I'm just like, I don't know how your business model works because I can't work out where you're making the money. Some events people pay to come in and then they have a whole experience. Sometimes it's free because someone's trying to push a brand. The way that my events work and how I like to do them is I know my strengths and weaknesses. I think that's the biggest thing I want to say to everybody with a business. Know your strengths and weaknesses. I hate it when I have to do something I know I'm not good at, you know, and as soon as I can, I try and get people in, I try and learn. But what I'm good at is coordinating all of the teams, making it fun for spectators to come in, making sure everything's organized. There's nothing worse than turning up at a barbecue competition and just like, so where do I set up? Where's the water? Oh my gosh, I forgot the ash cans, you know. So I like to make sure that everything's really well organized. Because I compete, I've also been a head judge a lot. I was assistant head judge for the World Food Championships one year. So there was like 900 turn-ins that sort of passed under us. So definitely done the judging side. You know, and I attend them. Like when I was starting out, I would set a budget for the year. When it ran out, that was it. I was just an attendee. Like there was no more competing. So I've sort of done it from all the angles, and I can pull that together. So I team up with bigger events now where it's like, okay, you can hire a band to entertain people, or you can bring in all these different things, or you can hire a food competition. Like I'll just dollop this food competition right in the middle of your event. So it takes up a lot of space. It gives people something to look at, like between, I mean, I do sportsman shows, so, you know, they have hunting and fishing and RVs and all these cool things, and people go past them, and then they can come and explore something there. You know, it gives it a lot of smells. There's always something going on. It adds like a vibrance to the event.
Nice.
So that's sort of how I do it. So then they're doing all that marketing side to general public and things, and I don't need to worry about that, and they're better at that than me. And that's how I get the competitors and the outdoor cooking brands in front of so many people, if that makes sense. So that's been a really good partnership.
It definitely is. It sounds like an interesting way to go about it. You're providing entertainment, for lack of a better term, to someone else's event, which is a great way to kind of get involved and get people into your space without having like so much marketing pressure on you. As someone that's marketing a conference right now, I know how stressful it is to trying to get people in the door.
Yeah, I mean, we do marketing as well to like people who follow the competition niche, or people who follow barbecue. But I don't just go to any old events. Like, I try and make sure that there's a good overlap. So we do like the Seattle Bite of Seattle, which is massive in itself, and everybody's there about food. So, like for years they've had like all the chefs doing like throwdowns up on the top stage, which I've been part of for about 3 years before I put my event in there. They have all the food trucks, they have all these cool things, they have wineries and stuff. So putting in a barbecue, and that one in particular is more grilling, so it's quick turnaround, really fits the demographic because people are already interested in the food. People cook surprisingly a lot outdoors. So, this was great. Like, while the ladies are off drinking their wine, it gives the men like steak and barbecue, and that type of thing. And one of the things I always try to do for every single event, and I get paid out for it all the time, is every day we have to have one thing, and we call it the sexy barbecue thing. And you'll know it straight away. So we've had whole hogs, like just massive whole hogs, and people get drawn to them, especially here because you don't see them very often. We've had alligators on spits. We've done massive pachettas, on barbecues, and it works so well. Like, everyone's like, oh, what barbecues are on? What spits that? Like, here you go, here's all the bread. But it just draws people in. Like, sometimes, particularly with barbecue, because they're closed. Like, it's a pretty boring thing unless you've got like X-ray vision or something. We always try to make sure that there's something that people can have a look at any point in time. So it's been interesting.
Outside of just having fun, what are the benefits of competing in these competitions?
So, from the competitive side, if you think about a lot of the barbecue restaurants you go to, you'll see their trophies. Like, if you win, it's like a massive marketing thing. I mean, you see it all the time, like award-winning barbecue. And it's funny because I'll walk into a restaurant and I'll go, oh, award-winning, what awards did you win? Like, and they're like, the boss did or something. But particularly in Kansas City, there's a restaurant, and in the middle of it's like a massive glass case of all the awards they've won. There's I'm going to just forget names because I'm a bit like that. I can see them and I can tell you every competition they've won, but I can't remember their name. He was doing exceptionally well. He was doing really well on the barbecue circuit. All of a sudden, he's got a contract with a national barbecue brand. He's got his own restaurant with them. So some people are using it as a stepping stone like that. On the weekend, there was a steak competition in a state where people are still allowed to go out, unlike mine. And there was it was White Lightning is the brand. It's like a garlic pepper salt rub, and he's an ex-world champion, which leveraged the start of his business, which got his product into a proper representation. So it's in like all the Cabela's and all sorts of stores around the country. And they said on the weekend that 7 of the top 10 teams in that competition used their product.
Wow.
So that's like how they've like used the competition to sort of take the steps from, hobby into product into now like going back into the competitions again to use it as marketing. And the other thing that a lot of teams sort of do, although I think a lot of them I wish would talk to their accountant a bit more because they're not doing this and they should, is it is actually marketing for your brand. So I still compete occasionally because I just like it. And one of them I compete in is our local spring fair. It's massive. I mean, there's literally hundreds of thousands of people coming to that event. And I just rang up the organizer and I'm like, look, if I'm the first person to pay, the first person to fill out all my health forms, because teams are really bad at doing that, can I pick my spot? And they were like, sure. So literally the forms went out 24 hours later. They had all mine paid for, everything there. And I got the prime spot. So as soon as you walk towards that, it was there. Bam. So my tent's there. It's got bushcooking.com logos on it. They can get my material and that. So even if they're not really interested in the barbecue competition, and go into that whole section, they still can't help but miss. And then my hope, and how it's supposed to work, is next time they go in camping or it comes up that they're cooking outdoors, they're like, didn't we see something about bushcooking.com and that had like outdoor recipes? Let's go check that out. So if I bought that booth spot as an exhibitor, it can range from $1,000 to $5,000. Typically it costs $250 to enter a competition, and then $200 to $500 on meat to actually compete. Wow. So when you start running the numbers like that, like even if I had a barbecue store, I would be like, who's going to compete? We just need someone to compete. And I've had people compete at my event so they can get their spot, and they've had all their reps there and everything. And I'm like, dude, you have to actually turn in. You just go and turn it in. Like, I know why you're here and why you're doing it, but please just, And I'm fine with it because I think it's a great idea and I do it myself. So there's some of that going on as well. And people also, they have restaurants, they're sending people to their restaurants. If they're sampling, they're like, oh, if you like it, come to my restaurant. So it's really good at like hitting that very specific demographic. Obviously, I'm talking a lot about outdoor cooking because that's my thing. But there's a lot of competitions everywhere. I mean, I see pizza competitions and tacos. A lady approached me the other day. She does a whole bunch of cupcake competitions. And I was like, yeah, I can't even bake. That might not work so well. I don't know what's involved. It sounds complicated. I've got like a great example, but it is out there in other ways. There's even halal cooking competitions. Nice. Maybe it's not as mainstream, but if you want to hit straight into people passionate on your area, if you find the right competition, it's great. And you can go in so many different ways. You can go in and compete if that's too stressful for you, which I can imagine doesn't fit everybody. Sometimes because you've already got the blog and you've got the reputation, you know what you're doing, you can go in and you can judge. Sometimes it's closed door judging. I do a lot of stage judging now. My only tip for that is say what you really think. I know that sounds really mean, but I did one and I judged like all these barbecue restaurants, and there was 2 other professional critics, and they were just like, oh, this is nice, that's good and everything. And I was just like, I think you're trying to cook Texas, but you've missed the mark. And like, no, this is I was just like that mean. Like, I felt sort of mean, but nothing I said was not validated. At the end of it, all the teams came to me and they're like, oh, I totally knew exactly what you were saying. Like, I can't believe the other 2 judges didn't pick it up. So by being honest and actually calling it out, you're actually gaining more respect from the people in the industry than being nice to them, if that makes sense. And then the other thing is, a lot of these events, you can just go in and pay a little bit to set up a booth or sponsor like a trophy, like some of the prize money. I've done that before. I sent, I think it was like $300 or $400 to the World Squirrel Cooking Championships, which totally fits my demographic. I've previously judged it, but this year I just sent them some money. I paid for the trophies. My name was on everything. I wasn't there, but my brand was. So.
Nice. They told you it was, at least.
Yeah.
I go to the Star Chefs conference every year in Brooklyn, and they have a Valhalla chocolate competition, pastry competition on the last morning of the conference every year. And so they have like stadium seating that you can watch them put together these amazing chocolate dessert sculptures and judge them. And it's a lot of what you're saying, that it's a way to add some excitement to just a general conference that's in the exhibition area, but it's bringing in a lot of more people just to see what some of these amazing pastry chefs are doing.
Yeah. And if you are concerned and you're not really sure, just find a little country event. And I won't name names, but someone from the Food Network entered under a false name into a chuck wagon competition, which, just for the record, is the hardest of all competitions to do. I got my GC in that and then I stopped because it's just too hard. Those guys are amazing, just if anyone ever sees them. And they turned up and they competed and they did not do well. And there was no media, no one knew they were there. They just sort of came, did their thing, and left. Obviously, they were running an experiment of some sort. I'm not sure what it was for. But you can sort of do that too. Like, you don't need to bring your brand name in with you when you first come in. Just give it a go. And I think now pretty much all the sanctioning bodies, trying to run through them all in my head, they all run classes of some sort. So you're not coming in completely cold. And all my events, and with PNWBA, because they're amazing, they'll always set up new teams with a mentor. You know, to the point where sometimes I think they must be fed up because everyone's like, "Oh, you're a new team. Do you need any help? Is there anything? You got any questions?" Like, you know, because it's just like anything. If people come in to compete and they don't win, they don't have a good time, they don't come back. So, you know, just like any sport, you've got to make sure they want to come back. So, and because the other thing that's really interesting, and it's how I actually ended up doing competitive barbecue, is it's what they call a double blind. So I never know what judge is eating my food, and a judge never knows whose food. So he could have eaten the winning one or the last one, and he wouldn't know. So because of the double blind, and here we have comment cards. So at the time, I was just here. I was part of an Australia group. I finally heard about this thing called American barbecue. I never had it. I never had ribs. I never had brisket. I never had pulled pork in my entire life. I found out about it, and I started cooking it at home. And the Australian group, I fed them all this food, and they're like, "This is amazing. This is amazing." It was crap, and I knew it was really, really bad. But like, everyone just wants to tell you what you want to hear. It's what family do. It's what friends do. So I was like, I need some real help here. So I entered a competition, and that's when I started doing it. So I was getting back these comment cards: too salty, burnt. And my life-changing comment ever was, "This is the best roast pork I've ever had in my life. Shame it's a barbecue competition." I was like, okay, I see where they're going with this. So, but you don't know who wrote that or anything, but you get genuine, real feedback, which is actually a hard thing to get in our culture right now, because everybody doesn't want to upset anyone's feelings, and I'm the same. But I have people, and they're like, "Can you taste this and tell me what you think?" And I'll like, "Look, I'm only going to give you a 1 out. I'm going to tell you what I really think. Now's your chance to say yes or no." And some people have said actually no, and then some people said yes, and then I've really just told them exactly what I think. But that's really hard to do these days.
Yeah, it's people ask people's opinion, but a lot of times I think it is like, I want to hear what you like about this, not necessarily give me your honest opinion about the good and the bad.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard. And, you know, if you're really asking, and that's why I liked it. And, you know, my barbecue wouldn't be anything today without all of those honest but mean comments.
So how did you go from competing in these to organizing them?
It's funny because I was thinking about that because I thought you were going to ask the question, and I truly don't really know. I mean, I have a background a lot in project management and that type of thing, and I could sort of see the benefits for everybody. In the Pacific Northwest, we don't have very many competitions, so by me bringing more competitions sort of keeps it alive. Like, some people join the board. I was actually on the board for I think a year, and I helped with everything. But you're also stuck on a board where you're voting and doing stuff. So I felt like I could give more back to, like, my passion by organizing events for people than I could through any of the other non-profit opportunities.
And so as an organizer, you handle it all from, you know, finding the location, whether it's on your own or an event where you're be a part of it, taking the fees, finding the judges, all of that?
Yes, but when you hire in a sanctioning body, they pretty much bring in the whole judging pool of people. So they technically organize the judges. Obviously, I like to reach out to and make sure that we've got enough. So that's what the sanctioning body does. But yeah, everything else is pretty much correct. You learn a lot about fire department rules, health department rules. Yeah, I've even had to register as a business in one of the cities that I wanted to have just one event. They're like, "Nope, you have to get this business permit. You have to be a business here." I'm like, oh, really? You know, but everywhere is completely different. What you can do in one place, you can't do in the other. And, you know, we haven't really mentioned the whole COVID thing, but at the moment, all my events are pretty much off. I cancelled 2020 money. It was just never going to work.
Yeah.
But in 2021, we'll be in a position where all the events are coming back. And I'm sort of really concerned on how much is going to blow my mind, because every county is going to have different rules on what's okay and what's not. So although I'm super excited to get back into it, I'm also like, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. And then I sort of, as the signature on all this, have the obligation that all the teams and stuff are following the rules, and and what happens if someone comes to my event and catches it? Like, forget the legal implications, it would just break my heart. So, it's there's a lot of complications around it. I don't think it's for everybody.
Jeez. How much time goes into planning one of these events?
A lot. Yeah. A lot. But it depends. Like, there's just so many variables. I've had fire departments where I've sent one email, filled out the form, it took 30 minutes to do, and it's good to go. I've had one where twice we had to fly to them, walk them through it. They never actually issued the fire permit. They turned up on the day of the event and then were like, oh, I get it now. And it's just like, so I spent, all of a sudden that 1 2-hour task was like 30 and hundreds of dollars, and still never got to the end of it. So you just can't tell, and a lot of this happens in the background. The competitors that judge the public, they don't know what's going on. I mean, I've seen crazy things. This wasn't one of my events, thank goodness, but I was there, and as part of that event, they were live streaming the demonstrations on the stage, which obviously is really good. It reaches a bigger market. It's good for the brands. The very first one that went up there, they played some music in the background of them like dancing up onto the stage, and they got a copyright block and took out the whole day of broadcasting. Like, they just shuttered the whole thing down and wouldn't let any of it go through. So, sometimes it doesn't matter how much planning you do, you can always just get something really, I wouldn't have been able to, nothing I do would have stopped that from happening, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit different.
I don't know if it sounds exciting or completely terrifying.
I think you have to have a particular personality for it. But you get to this point where everything's happening and the teams are doing their thing and the judges and the stage is working, and, the media's sort of come through, they've done all their live broadcasts, and you just get this moment of like silence where you get to stop and you look around and you're like, I just did this. And it is great. It lasts usually about 30 seconds and then something happens, but it's just this really cool feeling when you sort of pull something together like that off.
I love that. I think that's a great place to end the podcast on. You get a moment of silence and then something lights on fire and you have to go put it out. But so if people have more questions, they want to learn about cooking in their backyard, they want to get involved in competitions, they can go to bushcooking.com, contact you through there. Is that correct?
Yes, they can get me through the Bush Cooking. The foodsportconsulting.com is the one for actual competitions. And if you just like me and you want to talk to me, just go through LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. There's just really fascinating learning about the world of competitions. I know basically nothing about it, so it was very illuminating for me.
That's great. I love sharing my passion with people.
Well, thanks so much. This has been Makin Bacon, all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. There's a lot of different places you can take your blog, but learning where you actually want to go is critical to your success. This video is going to show you all you need to know about determining where you want to go so you can figure out the best way to get there.